Well, Grand Rising, everyone.
Grand Rising.
I'm so happy that you are here with us today. This is on this lovely summer day. I love summer in Southern California. I grew up on the East Coast. Summer's a little different there. Although I've been experiencing a little I was going to say humility. I'm experiencing that from time to time as well, but a little humidity these days. So, the weather's always changing. My name is Reverend Dr. Alexis Reid, and I'm the spiritual leader here at Centers for Spiritual Living, Capistrano Valley. And I'm really honored to be speaking to you today about this topic, which is very near and dear to me. We have this global theme that many of our centers around the world follow, and the global theme is this idea of rising higher and growing deeper, right? As above, so below. Like when we're growing, when we're shifting, when we're transforming things in our life, we're also growing deeper roots to sustain that growth. Today, this month, we're looking at this topic of rolling in the deep. And we've been using a couple of books to help support us with these topics. Last week, I had the book Undrowned, which is a wonderful book of prose about diversity and oneness, and it uses the landscape of ocean mammals as its basis to talk to us about the beauty of diversity and oneness and how they work together. And today I'm going to be working with a book called What It Takes to Heal. And this is a beautiful book that really talks about personal healing, community healing, racial healing, worldwide healing. And so there's so much wisdom in here that you can use to support yourself as you look to that place of, we talk about healing in our culture, and in our teaching, it's really about revealing. We believe that there is a place within you that is already whole, perfect, and complete. It has never been harmed or diminished in any way. And so as we practice this walk of new thought, as we practice these principles, we begin to have a greater revelation of that wholeness that lives within us. And today we're talking about honoring boundaries. And at first blush, for a philosophy that really touts oneness as one of its principal ideologies that we support in our philosophy and our teaching and a lot of the things that we read in our classes, boundaries might seem a little counterintuitive, right? Might seem like how we keep people away or how we make sure that we have good, solid fences around us. But honestly, when we are looking at boundaries, we're looking at healthy boundaries. And it has been said that healthy boundaries are love in action, not just for ourselves, but for our relationships, as we begin to understand how we can move into a place of understanding healthy boundaries. And in today's world, seems like everyone wants us to be everything to everyone, right? We have this, there are a lot of demands on our time and our attention. Certainly there's so much out there in the newest field about, where we stand as individuals and who we need to be when we grow up. Some of us still trying to figure that out. And so I think that can tend to dilute our attention on our own healthy boundaries. And the spiritual path, as I've already sort of alluded to, the spiritual path calls to us to shed any pretense that might be resting on top of our own authenticity, right? And it's easy to should ourselves. Right? We should ourselves. I should do this. I should do that. I should have done this. And sometimes a little healthy conflict or a little healthy frustration or a little healthy disillusionment is exactly what's called for, as opposed to trying to be the perfect, have the perfect behavior. Ernest Holmes talks about authenticity this way, and I really like the way he couches this. Ernest Holmes is the founder of Centers for Spiritual Living. He wrote a book called Science of Mind in the 20s, and it was later republished in the 30s, and it's chock full of wisdom. And although this quote, I believe, comes from another one of his publications, he writes, "I do not think that we should make such a claim to divinity that we forget we are human." I do not think that we should make such a claim to divinity that we forget we are human, not fighting against life, but cooperating with it. And so, friends, I think that sometimes we can think that we're here to transcend our humanness. And I feel like it's a little different than that. I think it's about integration of our humanness and our divinity, that when we become in alignment, when we bring ourselves to that cross-section of humanity and divinity, that's when we are really right-sized and authentic. That is the place where we can really begin to express our wholeness in powerful ways that not only support us, but support our relationships and our communities. Now, I want to tell you that I am uniquely qualified to talk about healthy boundaries today. Oh, you who are laughing hardest know me well. I am uniquely qualified because it is definitely a growing edge for me. A growing edge where I find myself going to one extreme to the other before I find myself in balance again. Oftentimes I can find myself in this place where on the one end of the continuum, the boundary for me is shutting down, withdrawing, and taking my marbles and going into my corner and playing it safe. And on the other end of the continuum, I can find myself not taking care of myself, not doing good self-care, making priorities of others more important than the priorities that I need to take care of, taking too much responsibility in situations that aren't really mine to take responsibility in. Are you guys tracking with this? Yeah. Am I the only one? I think that oftentimes we end up on opposite ends of the continuum of healthy boundaries because we care so much, because we have, so much passion for life. And sometimes we end up in that place of, and I'll talk about myself, I end up in that place of withholding or shutting down, or one of the other coping skills I have is really disassociating myself from the feelings or what's the conflict that's going on. It's just a way to have a sense of control, right? To take care of myself. And when I'm in that place of really wanting to go the extra mile and really be in service at the expense of my own self-care, I'm just there in my passion for life and community and others and my love for humanity. And when we talk about this idea of healthy boundaries, I'm talking about balance. I'm talking about balance between those opposite ends of the continuum where we can come to a place of what I like to call right-sizedness. Right-sizedness. It's when in this philosophy we are quick to remind each other that while we know that there is a divine power and presence in the universe, we also know it as ourselves. And yet right-sizedness is that place I come to where I remind myself that while I am not all of the ocean, I am the ocean, all of the ocean in a drop, right? To paraphrase a Rumi quote about the drop in you're not a drop in the ocean, but all of the ocean is in the drop. And so when I right-size myself in this journey of spiritual growth and coming to a place of healthy boundaries, I can begin to pull back from the extremes and come to a place of right-sizedness and more balance. I would like to think of boundaries not as walls, but as bridges. That when I raise my self-awareness to my boundaries, that I can create a bridge to healthy, intimate, and whole relationships, which is what we want in this quest for having a deeper experience of oneness. Boundaries have the promise of breaking down those walls of power dynamics so that we can see ourselves as equal. And that's how we bring ourselves back to oneness. Prentice Hemphill, in What It Takes to Heal, writes, "Boundaries are the distance at which I can love you and me simultaneously." Like it's not either or, it's both and, right? It's both and. And I want to say that maybe it's just my personal experience, but I seem to work harder at loving you than loving myself sometimes. Anybody relate to that? Yeah. But really, the walk is the both and, to look at those places where I am not being lovely to myself and to doing deep self-care while also loving you. And that's where we come into oneness. That's where we come into a place of honoring our differences and honoring ourselves and creating those bridges that bring us back to a place of authenticity. Boundaries, healthy boundaries, boundaries that build bridges rather than walls, require three things. They require us to look at our power dynamic. They require us to look at our authenticity, and they require us to look at our trust. And when we can have all three of those in balance, when we can be all of that, and also know that you're all of that too, that we all have equal billing in this power dynamic we call life, when we can begin to know that we're all entitled, if you will, to our passions and the things that we care about, and at the same time honor our own needs and wants. That's balancing the power dynamic. And I was thinking of examples of how I've walked through boundaries and gotten healthier with them. And, you know, for those of us that have children, adult children, there was this little threshold that I passed with my adult daughter. At one point, she was, when she was a teenager, of course, I needed to help her with, all kinds of things. And, there was the constant movement of money from my wallet to her pocket. And then as she became a young adult, she needed help in getting herself, on her feet as she was trying to establish herself. But I had this habit of, when I saw that she had a problem, I would just whip out my wallet. I'll solve it. I'll take care of this. But at some point, as this young teenage adolescent became a woman and in her own right, for me to step into, for her to share a challenge and for me to whip out my wallet, it sent an unconscious message. I don't have faith in you to solve your old problems. I'll solve it for you. Our relationship was challenging because somehow that behavior of mine kept us in this unhealthy dynamic as parent and adult child. And when I recognized this and I stopped trying to solve all her problems in whatever way I was trying to solve them, she began to respect herself. She began to look for ways to solve her own problems. And while there are times when I still have been there to assist my daughter, I wait until she asks for help. instead of jumping in there trying to be the hero. And so that's just a way, that was me taking too much responsibility that wasn't mine. And so that's just one example of how we can look at the way to take our boundaries. And I will say, at first, sometimes she was not so nice to her mother. Sometimes it was a little ouchy, and sometimes I would have to close the gates or build the walls to protect my own heart. But when I came to this balance, where I began to understand the dynamic that I was creating by not having a healthy boundary, our relationship shifted. And it's a lot healthier than it's been in a long time. She will turn 40 tomorrow. Yes, and I'm very excited for her. She's about to sit for the bar exam in Maryland. She's went back to school, and so I'll just give a little shout out to Emma Reid. So that's the tool of authenticity, of looking at my authentic responsibility, what's mine, who I need to be in that relationship, and bringing myself in a balanced way. The other thing to know about authenticity is that Apprentice Hemphill puts it this way. She says authenticity allows us to shelter, our boundaries allow us to shelter our authenticity. And she doesn't mean to limit it or hide it, but to give us the space to be in our own authentic expression, so that we can then be in authentic relationship. So that this authenticity, our boundaries actually give us the space we need to be authentic. The third tool in developing healthy boundaries is trust. And oftentimes it converts, when we can begin to look at our level of trust, it gets a little dicey. It's not always easy to move from fortresses that we create with boundaries to bridges when we're dealing with trust. Mainly because trust is shaped by our experiences and our identities and the culture we live in. And by having those experiences that shape us, it creates biases within us. And that's natural. Of course it does, because we're being shaped not only by our own internal thinking, but the thinking of the people around us. We're being shaped by our experiences, and we're being shaped by the who we think we are. And in order for us to step into a place of trust, we have to reclaim it. We have to actively engage and begin to reflect and to see the places where our thinking has gotten distorted. And that's not always easy. It's not easy when you're on the passionate side of something and you're really just so deeply steeped in your perception. And it's not easy when you're in that protective mode of protecting your heart. And sometimes we react with depression or withdrawal, when sometimes we react with rage and outrage and anger, and yet trust is one of those qualities that requires us to actively let go of some of our old perceptions so that we can begin to see things from more than one purview. Oftentimes, as I was thinking about my remarks this morning, sometimes my perception is colored by that kind of country western, twangy, he or she did me wrong, right? And sometimes it's hard for me to see through the eyes of my own pain or my own hurt or my own disillusionment to see the other side of that. And that's where spiritual community comes in. When we have community, when we have these honest relationships with one another, and we can sit with one another, and we can witness one another, we can listen to one another, and then we can have honest dialogue with one another. I have had the privilege of having beautiful, uncomfortable, honest dialogues with people in our community, and every time I come out better for it because I was willing to trust that there was something that wanted to be revealed on the other side of whatever the disturbance had been. I read somewhere that trust is the soil in which healthy boundaries grow. I like that. And in order to develop our trust, how do I put this? Sometimes it's hard to reach for trust if I'm still in the wound, if I'm still in the hurt, if I'm still in the pain. It's, what? You want me to do what? When I can bring my attention back to my heart, when I can bring my attention back to self-love and ground myself in a place of healthy self-love, well, that gives me a perception that because if I'm grounded in self-love as opposed to resentment, I'm going to be able to see the bigger picture. I'm going to be able to do my reflection practice. I belong to a recovery movement that has these things called the 12 steps. And there's these reflection steps that require us to take an honest assessment of our where we are in our relationships. We look at our resentments, we look at our hurts, and we look at our anger, and then we look at our part. And I want to say that there's this power in raising my awareness by starting with my triggers and then uncovering my part in that. I may not have caused it. I may not be responsible for it, but I'm at least responsible for my reaction to it. I'm responsible for how I hold it. I'm responsible for how I walk it back out into life. And when I can recognize that, well, here's the fun part. Once I recognize my part in it, then I come back to this place of working to be right-sized. And what that means is when I'm stuck in a dynamic, we have this thing called spiritual mind treatment. It gives us the ability to, it's affirmative prayer. The spiritual mind treatment is a 100-year-old phrase that kind of flips people out when they first come here. We're not going to hook you up to any machines or anything, I promise. But we will help you reach to a idea that lives within you that you haven't seen yet, that you haven't been able to access. And so we have practitioners that can help you with that. And we do this practice, I like to refer to affirmative prayer as neuro-regeneration, because we have all these thought patterns that we keep going to. Am I the only one who, at night, like, well, if I had said this, then this would have happened, and if I had done that, then this would have happened. Like, that's a deep groove in my neural pathways that needs to be reprogrammed in a way. I need to be lifted out of it. And so we have a spiritual remedy. A spiritual remedy for changing our thinking so that we can step into a place of revealing our wholeness. And this has everything to do with building trust and having new experiences, because Holmes said it, Barry and I were talking about it this week, Holmes said it himself in this infamous quote, "Principle is not bound by precedent." So whatever happened to you in the past does not dictate what's going to happen to you going forward. You have agency. You have tools. You have spiritual community. You have prayer. You have spiritual practice. You have the self-reflection of being able to raise your awareness. We are not powerless, folks. And thank God for people like Ernest Holmes and those that followed him. There are so many, I can't even begin to name them. Many are authors in our Science of Mind magazine. You can read the articles. that continue to remind us of our agency, continue to remind us that we can grow, that we are allowed to change the rules mid-game, that we can decide to be different in a relationship. Now, that other person might not change, but you might. You might not be as triggered by someone else's behavior when you begin to understand your own healthy boundaries. And the last quote from Prentice Hall that I want to share with you is, balance is not a stagnant state, it's a dance. Relationship, at its most mutual and its most just, is negotiated. That we are always in this place. And if we can't negotiate with someone else, we can negotiate with ourselves. We can decide who we want to be in that relationship. We can decide to completely remove ourselves from some relationships. Healthy boundaries are boundaries where we are right-sized with our relationship with the universe and each other, where we continue to look for balance of the power dynamic, when we continue to look for balance in our authenticity, where we continue to press in to places where we can grow our trust in the universe that is always there to help us reveal a greater truth within ourselves that we can walk back out into the world. What a marvelous system we have in this spiritual practice. My invitation to you this week is to lean in to those boundaries that keep you separate, and consider where you might have misplaced your power and your authenticity, and be willing to trust love enough to bring you to the boundaries you set through fear and limitation, and rebuild boundaries that are bridges to intimacy and wholer relationships and greater justice. Thank you very much. So let's do some of that neuropathway regeneration, shall we? And join me, if you will, in this affirmative prayer. Knowing that the power and the presence, the very flow of life that makes the sun and the stars and the earth rotate around each other in perfect harmony is the same thing that makes the grass grow. It's the same thing that beats your heart. And it is available to us. All we have to do is say yes. And so I know for each one that we align ourselves with this power and this presence. We allow ourselves to be conduits for the power and the presence and the love and the beauty and the joy and the freedom and the wholeness of spirit. So I know for each one that we are guided, guarded, and protected, that we have that right-sized relationship, knowing that this power is moving through us at all times, and that at any time we can change course, we can make a different decision, and we can walk the beautiful Della Rosa of roses, that pathway of roses that takes us to that whole and authentic expression that not only allows us to love ourselves, but allows us to reflect that love back to each other. And so I know today is the day where we choose love. We choose to be whole. We choose to see God in the other, knowing that that is where our oneness intersects. And so it is with a grateful heart that I speak this word, that I know this truth for everyone, not only those here in this beautiful sanctuary or watching this recording, but for all beings. It's that beautiful loving kindness meditation. May all beings be at peace. May all beings know love. And so it is with gratitude that I simply anchor this prayer in that beautiful, powerful, benevolent, peace-loving power, that we accept this, that we appreciate it, that we allow ourselves to be one with it by saying together, and so it is.